And good morning, everyone. We are here for our 24th The Ed Collab gathering. If you can believe that, I barely can. We are so happy that you are here with us. I am Christopher Lehman. You can call me Chris. I'm the founding director of the Educator Collaborative. And I'm here to help you navigate today, to introduce our keynote speakers, and then we'll be off and started. Thank you so much for tuning in wherever you're watching us. Might be on YouTube, might be on Facebook, Instagram. We're streaming in lots of places right now. So today's gathering, we are calling, or today's theme is for students. And I'll talk more about this theme as we move into these opening remarks, but we'd like you across this entire day to have in mind your hopes and dreams for the students that you teach, for the students that you lead, maybe the students in your own life, to hold them with you. Today's gathering is hosted by my professional home, the Educator Collaborative. You can find us at theedcollab.com. We are a K-12 literacy think tank of teachers, administrators, professors, authors, researchers. We all meet together to study our own practices and to connect over students and our amazing profession. We also provide professional development for schools and workshops for organizations. So please reach out. Again, you can find us at theedcollab.com. And across today on whatever social media you may be on, these are the few that we're on, please do tag us at the Ed Collab. We can also make sure that presenters see any of your great comments as well too. So here are some tips on how to navigate today. So if you, for example, are on Instagram right now and this video just popped up and you're watching, hi, what we'd suggest is the very best place to go in order to watch all of today's sessions is over on YouTube itself. And you can find those YouTube links for all of the sessions if you go to gathering.theedcollab.com. And over the top of each one of the sessions, like this opening keynote that you might be seeing streaming right now, if you click on that link, it will take you right to the Facebook page, the YouTube page. The reason why you might want to join there is that that is the place that you can live chat with other participants, like many of you have already started. You can chat with other participants as well as with presenters. And that's where we'll be able to see and hear from you. And we also can add some of what you're saying to the screen. For example, I saw, where were you? Hannah's here today. Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much for joining us. Here's Annie. Thanks, Annie. Good morning to you as well, too. Here's Soshi, who will be presenting later. Hi, Soshi. Good morning. Heather is here, too. So thanks to all of you for joining. If you join us over on YouTube, that is the very best place to watch today. If you're on the go or you are on your couch, anywhere that has the YouTube app, you can also watch today's conference. For example, I have it on right now on my TV. I have an Apple TV connected to that TV. I went to YouTube on my Apple TV, searched for the Ed Collab, found this playlist, Fall 2025, and I could watch from my couch if I weren't presenting to you too. The only thing that you won't be able to watch all of from the YouTube app is the Zoom town hall. So this was going to be the second gathering that we do this. We tried this for the first time in spring, and it was so great. If you have registered for today, and if you have not, do it right now. Even if you're watching this stream, if you'd like to join the Zoom town hall, you do need to register. It is free. You then, just before it starts, will get a Zoom link in your email inbox, and that's where you can join us. The Zoom at the end of the day is a place for today's presenters, the Ed Collab members, all of us to come together with all of you who are tuning in, to have conversations, to basically debrief the day, but also to think and dream forward. So we hope you will join us at the end of the day for that town hall. And if you haven't yet registered for that, please make sure that you do. The gathering is free to join, as I mentioned. And what we do is, instead of asking you to pay us for a registration fee, or perhaps instead of you traveling to us as a conference and paying for flights and hotels, or even in the middle of the day, where you might run off to go get coffee across the street from the convention center before you come back, Because you're not paying for today, we have asked you since the very beginning to pay the joy forward. And we adopt every gathering two or more charities, and those are chosen by our keynotes. So this morning's charities were chosen by Katie Woodray and Stella Villalba, who will be joining us in a moment. Kids in Need of Defense, which provides legal aid for children inside the immigration system. It has been a long-standing practice in the US that children have to represent themselves in immigration court. And now, with federal decisions that have been made around budget cuts and just around the general sense of how this administration is treating immigrants, there are many children who appear by themselves, children that appear in a court and have to make decisions about their future without support. Kids in Need of Defense for many years has offered free legal support to children, to families, and lots of wraparound services. So please, if you find today inspiring, consider giving what you would have spent on coffee or registration or a flight towards Kids in Need of Defense. The other charity today is local to Katie. It's Mountain Projects. Mountain Projects offers a wide variety of supports through a number of different programs and granted organizations that help to support people living with the effects of systemic poverty in North Carolina, right around where Katie's from. Mountain Projects, Katie has described, she might mention it herself too, is also an organization that she has supported. So if today feels inspiring to you, if there's any moment where you're like, oh, wow, and your mind's on fire, please do consider clicking the charity button on our event website, or you can go directly to gathering.theedcollab.com/charity, and you can give to those. You also could choose another charity of your choice as well, too. That's up for you to decide. We just hope you will pay the joy forward. So in a moment, I'll introduce our opening keynote, but I just wanted to say a bit to frame our day. Today's focus is on for students and all the variety of ways that we show up for them and the things that we can do on behalf of them. When I think about this moment that we're in right now, I ask myself, what are we presenting for students? What world is being created for them? What messages are they seeing in the media, in our politics, on the kinds of people that are propped up and held up in this era of bullies, in this era of openly sharing hate, in this era of bringing the military into US cities against our own people? I'm angry. I think I have not felt this angry about what's happening in a long time. And this anger that I'm feeling is also full of sadness. It's full of rage. It's full of confusion. I think about all of our goals as educators, and I just ask myself, what are we doing? How are we for students when we barely feel like we can be here for ourselves and for each other? What world are we creating for them? And if you have felt hopeless or angry or frustrated, if you haven't, thank you. We need your energy. But I've struggled in, I'd say, the past just couple of weeks. I've been in a low that I've now climbed. I'm slowly climbing back out of. And I think when you feel stuck, when you worry, what are we creating for students? I think the most important thing to do is to begin with dreaming. I wanted to share one of my absolute favorite quotes when it comes to activism, and this is from Dan Savage. During the darkest days of the AIDS crisis, we buried our friends in the morning, we protested in the afternoon, and we danced all night. And it was the dance that kept us in the fight, because it was the dance we were fighting for. I need a moment. When I think of the challenges we have faced as a country, when I think of the challenges we've faced as a human race, um, The AIDS crisis is one of many civil rights issues across time. It was a time not that different from today where the federal government and many state governments dismissed entire groups of people. They said if you are queer, especially men, there's a mysterious disease attacking your community that we're not really going to pay attention to. And there was media shame, there was political shame, there were policies to allow people to die. It was a dark, dark era, not too different from the darkness I'm feeling today. And what I love about this quote is that Dan reminds us that there is sadness and there's a fight, but we also have to dream. We have to know what we're fighting for. And so I am going to ask you this morning, before we get started, to think, what are you fighting for? There's a lot to fight against. And so you could think that way. There's a lot of things to fight against. But I want you to dream about what you're fighting for. And I'm going to ask you for just a moment here to really try to see it, to picture it. And I'll invite you to do probably one of the best organizing techniques there is, and that's to focus local. So begin with that vision you're creating for yourself of what you're fighting for with something very, very close to you, like your classroom or your home, your family, or your community, or somewhere that you often go. Think about that local place. If I'm thinking about classrooms, for example, and just like Dan Savage said, the dance is what we were fighting for. I want to imagine a school, for example, where regardless of your gender identity, you feel welcome and safe, and you can be your true self. That a transgender child can use the bathroom that they'd like, and they feel loved by their whole community, and they see smiles all day long. That's one thing I want. I can picture in a classroom, if I try to see it, that some of our recent immigrants who may be English language learners as well, they come to school where they see and hear examples of their language, and they feel safe and held because their voices are in the building too, and in the classrooms that they're in. So I'd like you to think, as I move to our keynote speakers, I would like you to picture for yourself and really try to see, what are you fighting for? Because it's that hope, it's that dance that's going to get us through. There's a lot to fight against, and we can think about the things we want to stop, but hold in your heart the closest what you're fighting for. And there are no two better people to talk about what we're fighting for than Katie Woodray and Stella Villalba. Both Katie and Stella in their work to create classrooms that are worth fighting for. Classrooms where children feel empowered, where they see community that is caring and loving and communal. Inside of their book, I'm going to change the slide here for just a moment before we bring them on. In their brand new book, Wondrous Words, that I have my copy here, I just wanted to read one line on page 18. Writing workshop is a collective endeavor. It's about working together, supporting each other. The students and I do this work in community with each other and with authors. So without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stage here Stella Villalba and Katie Woodray. Before you start, I'm now a minute over, but I do want to say to both of you, as I was early in my career in consulting, both of you are people who had a greater impact on me than perhaps you realize. There was an NCT conference that I somehow was in a room with Katie Woodray, and I had never met her before, but I had original Wondrous Words, and somehow we were in a conversation, and Katie said, you know what, Chris? It was something to the effect of, in this work, it can be hard. You feel like, what's to come next? What's to come next? And the one bit of advice I want to give you is do good work. As long as you do good work that you believe in, the work will keep coming. And that has stuck with me, and that has been a heartbeat for me because of you, Katie. So thank you for that. And Stella has bought me Jenny's ice cream so many times on the road, and is full of her heart. Just exudes through every pore, and has always been a great champion of all children and a great support for me too. So thank you both for being here this morning. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. Stella and I are actually going to take turns this morning. I'm going to talk for a little bit first about Read Aloud and the powerful tool that Read Aloud can be for teaching students to write with voice and with power, which since I started as a teacher back in the mid 80s, perhaps has never been more important than it is right now in this moment. And I've got to get right into it. I'm going to talk about sound and Read Aloud. And I want to start with a little bit of Read Aloud from the new edition of, no, go back from that. Jessica, no, I'll tell you when I need you to go there. This is a little Read Aloud from Wondrous Words. If you happen to have the book, it's on page 53. It's the chapter about Read Aloud, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But I want to read you the first paragraph of this chapter. Reading aloud to students has to be one of the greatest joys of teaching. Whether it's a powerful picture book you read in one sitting or a novel that keeps you spellbound for weeks at a time, there's just nothing better than sharing a really well-written text with students. Reading aloud is so joyful, and it does so much work for us as teachers, too. It motivates the youngest students to learn to read for themselves. It creates community as we live through stories together. It promotes conversation when the reading is provocative, or collective silence when the words leave us without words. And it may just be the most powerful tool for teaching writing there is. This is a chapter in Wondrous Words that I completely started over on, and because I knew for years that the chapter on Read Aloud in the original edition was not doing the work that it needed to do. I knew that there was a lot more to Read Aloud and the power tool that it is for teaching writing than was represented in that chapter. So I completely started over with this. And there were two ways over time that I came to understand I needed to rethink what I was saying about Read Aloud as a tool for teaching writing. One of them was my own experience as a writer. I wrote a lot subsequently after Wondrous Words, a lot of books, lots of time writing, lots of time in a chair writing, drafting, revising. And I realized that I spend more time reading when I'm drafting than I do actually writing, because I reread every single thing that I write over and over and over. I read a sentence over. I read that sentence with the next sentence. When I get a whole paragraph in, I'm reading that paragraph. When I have 7 paragraphs in, I read all 7. I'm just constantly rereading. And that reading that I'm doing is very much like a read aloud in a classroom. I'm not reading it. I'm not skimming it. I am actually sort of performing it as a text in my head. It is audible in my head. Now, you may or may not hear me if you were sitting next to me, but I read everything I draft, from an email to an essay, as if it were a read aloud. And there's 3 things I'm always trying to figure out. One is, does it mean right? Is it meaning the way I want it to mean? One, though, is, does it sound right? And the third thing is, does it all work together? And I want to focus this morning on the does it sound right? How do I know when writing sounds right? What sound am I listening for? So that was one thing. My own experiences as a writer helped me to understand, wow, read aloud is how I draft and revise. It really is, particularly revise more than draft. I read aloud what I'm writing, and I listen to it. The other thing, though, was that countless writers, again and again and again, other writers I admire, writers whose work I love, attested to the power hearing and sound in their writing as well. So now let's look at this Jacqueline Woodson quote. This is a simple little one. It's back to Jacqueline Woodson. There we go. I rewrite as I go, and I read everything I write out loud. It has to sound a certain way. Okay. Such an interesting thing. It has to sound a certain way. Like, what way is it that it needs to sound? And then here's another one. This is from Tommy Orange, who I just love. I love this interview. It was done with Gilbert Cruz in the New York Times book review interviews. Tommy Orange says, I was actually driving in my car listening to this interview, and I just about like had to pull over. I was so moved by it. He says, I think I was transformed by my education in sound. I didn't realize how much listening to the sound of sentences, those emphasis is mine, was a part of my revision process. That's a sonic element that I can't do without. There are no final drafts of my work that haven't gone through extensive periods of reading the sentences out loud and really thinking about how they sound. And the final check to me of whether or not I think the sentence is ready or okay enough is to let go. To let go is the sonic evaluation. The sonic evaluation. So let's think about sound and writing, and particularly sound and powerful writing for a minute. If you think about the sound of a spoken voice, it is crafted by the listening that you did, the voices you grew up surrounded by. I have a Southern accent, in case you hadn't noticed, and that's because I grew up in South Carolina. I've lived in North Carolina now longer than South, but still in the South. And I speak, I use expressions, I make sounds. The sounds of words are like the people around me. I learned to talk from listening to people around me. Well, a writing voice is crafted by where you've lived your reading life, right? If the ways you use expressions, the way you understand language can work, the things you try, the things you do, comes from where you've lived your life as a reader. So if we want to help students craft powerful writing voices, we have to make sure that they are immersed in powerful writing, but powerful reading and writing. But of course, then there's another step to it, which is that we as teachers, in order for Read Aloud to be helping students to craft a powerful writing voice, our knowledge base as teachers is important. The more we know about writing and the more we know about how writing works when it's working, the more we understand where sound in writing comes from, the better we can create read alouds that are what I like to call a performance of text. And I'm not talking about like doing character voices and things like that. I'm talking about reading it, not just what it says, but how it says it. And we're helping students to understand how it says it. And the more you know about writing, the more you can do that. So if you think about it and you think about where does sound come from in writing, like what are the things I need to know about as a teacher of writing? I use my hands a lot. I'm realizing when I can see myself on screen. Sorry, I'll try to keep them in my lap. Where does sound come from in writing? Well, it comes from the structure of sentences, the shortness, the longness of sentences. It comes from the way that sentences work together, the deep sinew of connections between sentences. It comes from white space, and especially the white space around paragraphs and paragraph breaks. Paragraphing and how you break up long text is an incredibly important crafting skill. It comes from word choices, from the syllables, the tone of words, the sounds of words. It comes from the mindful ordering of words. And usually they follow the path of least grammatical resistance. But sometimes, and especially when they diverge from that path, they surprise us and delight us. And the smallest change in any one of these things can change the way something sounds. So as you're listening for when does it sound right, you're paying attention to all of these things. When you read aloud with students, you're teaching them what good writing sounds like, and you're particularly teaching them how it sounds when it's working, how writing works. and especially when it's powerful. And this is the voice that you're trying to create in students' heads as they write themselves. So if you think of read aloud as that, as a performance of how a text is working, then the more you know about how texts work, the more you can be intentional in that teaching. Your read aloud becomes much more intentional. So to explore that, I want to just look at a few examples of text this morning. And yeah, okay, just stop there for a minute, and I'll talk about this one for a minute. And we're going to look at some texts that work together in what I call show then tell and tell then show sentences. And if you happen to have Wondrous Words with you, the new edition, I explain these on page 155. But the first one we're going to look at is tell then show. And this is when you set up an idea. You make sort of a broad claim about something. And then you write a series of sentences that support that claim. They back it up, and they're working together. Sometimes they're even sharing the subject and verb from the original sentence that set them up. Sometimes they're not. But you make a claim and then you back it up. And I don't know if you realized it, but when I read aloud to you from the opening paragraph of the chapter on Read Aloud, it was this kind of sentences. There were these kinds of sentences in that paragraph. I said that reading aloud is so joyful and it does so much work for us as teachers too. That was my claim. And then I gave you a series of sentences that backed that up. I see that all the time when I read. I recognize it when I see it. I know when it's happening. And so when I'm reading aloud to students, I make sure that I try to communicate how that's working with them. So I chose for today all examples from just my everyday reading of life. If you have Wondrous Words, those examples come from children's literature. Lots of picture books, middle grade novels, some young adult novels, all children's literature. But I wanted to choose from you to just show you how everywhere I read, I see writers crafting and I notice it. And this is that knowledge base that helps me teach with power, helps me read aloud with power. So this was an article from a few weeks ago, and you have to know that this is a very difficult article for me to share with you because I am a huge North Carolina Tar Heel fan. We have a new coach this year, Bill Belichick. Lots of hope coming in with him. You know, people were crazy about North Carolina football and what was going to happen. And the first game, we got slaughtered. And this article, which was written by Brendan Marks, who I love, he reports on sort of North Carolina sports. He lives in that area, in the Raleigh area, is about that. And it's about how crazy Chapel Hill was that day. There were people everywhere. The stadium was full. We're going to be it now that we have this new coach. It was amazing. And then we start to get blown out. And so you come to this part in the article. Okay, now you can turn forward to the next slide, Jessica. And, she's done all this buildup. This is about 3/4 of the way through the article, all this built up about how crazy it was in Chapel Hill, how crazy it was in game. And this student says on the phone before the cell signal dropped out, "Mom, there are a lot of people." And I'm going to be quiet for just a minute and let you kind of read this amazing bit of crafting right here. And then I'll pick back up. So take a minute to read. Okay. We just don't have a lot of time. So I don't know whether you got finished or not. But as I'm reading this, and if I'm reading to students and I realize I'm inside a bit of text that works this way, I have to make sure that my read aloud communicates to students how it's working. So what Brendan Marks does here is he sets up this idea of the people leaving the stadium came in gashes, and then you find out what the gashes are. So let me read this aloud to you, reading it like someone who understands how it's working. And then hours later, there weren't. The pregame light show, the fireworks, all that momentum swelling inside Kenan Stadium, it didn't vanish in a flash, but rather in gashes. In a pick six by starting quarterback Gio Lopez, 76 seconds after a UNC interception, the Tar Heels' lone turnover forced all night seemingly offered a glimmer of hope. In 2 real-time hours without completing a single pass, in a 75-yard untouched touchdown run by TCU back Kavorian Barnes on the first play of the second half, in a scoop and score fumble recovery during which Lopez injured his back, pushing the score to an overwhelming 41-7 margin midway through the third quarter. That one, it turned out, was the final straw, the signal flare for fans to run to the exits to get as far away from this place, from this nightmare as possible. So sad. I don't know how many of you saw it. Probably not that many, but it was really sad. That is me understanding, and there's so much more actually going on in that little excerpt of writing. I could go in and point out other things, but I just wanted to focus on, you set an idea up. It didn't vanish in a flash, but rather in gashes, and then you list out what the gashes are. That's a tell then show way of crafting that I use a lot when I write myself, and I see lots of places. As a matter of fact, go to the next slide, Jessica. This is actually another little bit of reading I was doing in AARP magazine. This is the opposite. This is tell, then show. I mean, it's show, then tell. So you're going to show something and then tell it. My wild ride through Appalachia. It's about a guy who during the pandemic had to take a job working as a mailman in Blacksburg, Virginia, to help make ends meet. I was the guy with the goods. And I carried the candy and the respirators and the dog food and the lube and the heirloom tomato seeds, the hot rod magazines, the handwritten pleas from incarcerated uncles, the scientific journals, tabloid-sized book reviews, model train sets, illustrated children's Bibles, the hand-painted postcards from artistic cousins and estranged girlfriends. The story I told myself was this. I had joined a brotherhood that stretches back to Benjamin Franklin, to men on horseback and in biplanes. I had become a flag-wearing, sworn federal officer in a position of trust, the duly appointed agent of the United States government in a time of national crisis, the dedicated and beloved civil servant of the people. I was the mailman. So see, this does the opposite. It shows and then it tells. And I have to tell you that I feel horrible. I can't read that. Here it is, the name of that author. It's Stephen Starring Grant is the author of that. And I don't have time for one more, but go ahead and fast forward a section. You might be able to find. I was reading this morning at breakfast this fabulous article about having a weekly dinner party for friends. And I came across one of these sentences there as well. And so you can go find that in the New York Times today online, probably, if you want to read one more. Here's the point, though. The more, and you can take that one off now. The more that I know about a teacher of writing, the more I can teach kids what good writing sounds like, what powerful writing sounds like when it is well crafted, because I understand the craft of it. And that if we want to teach kids to write with power in a world where that matters more than it possibly ever has before, we need to think about the role that Read Aloud plays in them crafting powerful writing voices. And now I'm going to turn over to my friend Stella, who's going to talk about some of that powerful writing work in the classroom.
Thank you so much, Katie. And this is so powerful because Katie is grounding us in understanding why it matters, why the role of sounds matter in crafting powerful writing alongside our students. And it's a Saturday morning, and many of us are, ready to meet with children, students on Monday. And I want to offer you three very concrete examples that are included in the reimagined version of Wondrous Words, in order for you to know exactly how to lift this work with students. So I First, I want to offer you, I'm going to go to the next slide to show you two containers and possibilities in during writing time that it's very, very, very powerful that we must protect and that we must also honor in our classroom, conferring and sharing time. I want to I want to also here do a confession. At the beginning of my teaching career, sharing time was a time where, oh, did our writing workshop run too long? Oh no, there's no time for sharing. We skipped it. Oh my goodness. Very bad mistake. Because this is their time. Sharing time is a student's time. Conferring time is a student time. And now more than ever, we have to protect a time where students' voice is at the center of our teaching and learning. And one of the things that I have learned throughout the years, as just as Katie was sharing her own reflection of her own evolution in thinking about the role of sound in writing, is I was thinking there are two places I need to lean in more in order to make this happen. And it's conferring and sharing time. And let me show you how that may look like. I'm going to offer you three ways that reading out loud, guiding our students through these three ways of reading out loud our pieces, either during conferring time and in preparation for sharing time, can really, really elevate their work as writers. One is reading out loud to rehearse. And this, when I say reading out loud to rehearse, this is what I mean. I ask writers, how do you want others to read your work? How do you want to sound when you read your work? And Katie reminds us that about this idea of the performance of text, right? And how something it says when it is working. And this is again given the agency and the power for our students to decide. And during conferring time, one thing that I love to do is ask them that question. So let me show you an example. I was conferring with this amazing writer, and you can see it from the screen. The word family is all in capital letters with an exclamation point, and then there is a bit more writing, and then there is the at the end, right? Now, I think I know how I would like to read it, but actually, this is this is this is the girl's writing, and I want to ask her, how do you want others to hear and read your work? When I asked her that in conferring, she looked at her writing, and because there is a reason why you put it all in capital letters. Tell me how you want to hear your work and how you want others to read your work. And here comes the performance of text, right? And what is a better place than conferring time in that one on one time when we sit alongside our writers and ask them this powerful question for them to rehearse it? Because she rehearsed it with me during conferring, when it was time for her to share during sharing time, she delivered a very powerful story and she grabbed the audience attention. So, one way to do this is to read out loud to rehearse. Let me offer you a second possibility, reading out loud to revise. And again, I want to circle back to what Katie says. You know, is this working, right? Sometimes we got to hear we read as writers, we know that we got to read our work. And when we're reading out loud, all of a sudden we realize, ah, oof, I'm tripping over here. That's not what I meant to say. Or it sounds very confusing. So, noticing a part in the story that does not make sense is part of reading out loud to revise. And again, during conferring time, this is a good time to practice this. And let me show you with an example. I was meeting with this amazing writer, and she included a lot of dialogues in her stories. And I always ask the writer to read out loud her work to me. And as I am listening, she's also listening to herself, and she is stumbling over a couple parts in the dialogue, meaning it's not flowing. So I asked this 9-year-old, I said, can we pause right here? Can we can you go back and read that again? How did that sound to you? Is there a part here in your writing that you might need to revise? And she said, yeah, Miss Villalba, there is a part right here. I forgot to say this. Can I go back and add it? And I said, that's exactly why we read out loud or work. We read out loud to also revise as we hear ourselves telling that story. And I think this is so powerful. And what happens next is she goes back, she revises her work. And when it's time for her to share, she's not stumbling over her words because she had an opportunity to read aloud, to rehearse, and now she's able to deliver her story as she intended to be. And now let me give you the third and last example of how reading out loud for the purpose of how sound play a role in crafting powerful narrative can be very transformative. And it's reading out loud to celebrate. I talked with our students a lot about how good writing has rhythm and flow. And honestly, this is 100% again a writer's choice. How do I want to sound like? How do I this is my story and I decide how I want to deliver it. There was this beautiful moment when Katie Papish, a teacher that I get to collaborate, wonderful educator, was conferring with a student and she noticed that there's the word "so" was a stretch across the page, and she said, "How do you want to sound in here?" And this child is full of energy, and it's just has a way to celebrate her own self, her work, and we love that. And we talked about, yes, writing, words, language has sound. How do you want it to sound like? And one of the things that throughout this process, and again, just to recapture and revise together, three possibilities to how to think about the powerful role of sounds in writing. I invite you to think of these three different possibilities: reading out loud to rehearse, just before they share with others, give them an opportunity to rehearse. It can't be that the first time they're going to read aloud their work is during sharing time. They have to have opportunities to rehearse it before then. Reading out loud to revise, right? An opportunity to ask yourself, how is this working? And if it's not, what can I do to make it work? And reading to celebrate. I this work is circular. We come back to this work over and over with our writers. And once our students understand, and this is where the power of us educators to be consistent with our practice, because we have to show up continuously during conferring with our students and inviting them to think through this lens until they can internalize it. Now, after spending so much time with students doing this work, I see them, and sometimes they will come to me and say, Miss Biaba, I read this work out loud like 3 times. I didn't prompt them. They come back and say that. And that's how I can see that they're starting to understand this idea that actually is going to serve them for the rest of their lives. So Katie talked about this. This is so important. We got to model this through Read Out Loud. And may I just say, with our own writing, we are writers that are part of this learning community. We also I invite all of us to take chances with our students. Writing, it's hard work. And what we're asking our students to do, it's a beautiful work that we should also be able to do it alongside them. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to listen to the sounds in the classroom. And if there's a beautiful conversation, I may turn it into a small story, right? And I'm just going to read this out loud to you. There is a beautiful, wonderful writer in our class, Micah, who came with a lot of energy one particular morning. And Miss Katie Papish and I were talking about his energy, and we're just joking with him, like, what happened today, Micah, before you came to school? And this family, they are from the Caribbean, and they are so open and wonderful about sharing the ways that they share and break bread together with their families, and sometimes, drinking coffee, telling stories. And so I said, this conversation is inspiring me to write a story the day Micah discovered coffee. And I it's a fictional story, right? But I gave it a go during writing workshop. I just gave myself 2 minutes to write and to compose. And then I demonstrated all these three different ways that I just suggested and share with you so that the students can see that I'm also living this writerly life and doing this work. That this is not just work that we're doing together as third graders or fourth graders. This is actually work that will serve us for the rest of our lives. And so one way, let me just read this part to you. I wrote, um, Mom pours just a little bit of coffee for Micah. Micah holds a cup of coffee as if it was a treasure he just found. He holds it with both hands and he sniffs. Ah, coffee. Ah, smells so good. Micah takes another sip and then another. Slow down, Mom reminds him. But Micah loves the taste of coffee. He loves the smells of coffee. Actually, he loves everything about coffee. Okay, come on, we gotta go to school. Mom nudges Micah. As Micah grabs his backpack, he starts to feel more and more awake. He feels like his body is ready to dance, run, dance, and run. What is happening to my body? This is just a little snippet that I wanted it to give you all of the power of also writing and doing this work alongside of our students and being, we got to take a risk, right? We got to write alongside our students and show us how this work also comes to life with our own writing. And I want to conclude with this powerful quote on page 61. The voice I adopt as a speaker comes from the places I have lived as a listener. The voice I adopt as a writer comes from the places I have lived as a reader. And before we continue with this wonderful Saturday, learning from other educators, writers, authors, thinkers, I want to come back to the wonderful question that Chris Lemon opened up this morning with, which is the question, what are you fighting for? And I want to take a minute to just answer that question. I'm fighting for our students and for our students' agency, the right to express themselves, the right to compose in ways that honor who they are and whose they are. Let's protect our writing time with our students. Let's protect their agency to make decisions as writers and as full intellectual beings that they are. It is absolutely my honor to be here with all of you today and with my wonderful Katie Wood Ray, who have changed my life with her wonderful books.
Thank you both so much. As has come up in the comments, we've been crying there in our private chat on the side too. Rosa, one of the teachers and tech volunteers today, was like, my pen hasn't stopped moving. I'm taking so many notes. And just to say, likely everyone here has a copy of the reimagined edition of Wondrous Words, but if you don't, um, as Katie explained in the first edition of this book, it's a book that is loud. It is full of the words of teachers and children. It also is an unbelievable treasure trove of their entire sections of different ways to structure texts and ways that you can do different sorts of word work. It is a book. If you own the first, get the reimagined version. It is so beautiful. And congrats to both of you for just adding yet another essential text to our field. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us. This was lovely.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone I haven't done anything like this in a long time, so I was a little rusty, but thank you for giving me some space to do it. I enjoyed talking about it.
I will say when we invited, which was very natural, of course, to invite Katie and Stella, Katie did say, I don't do this, but you know what? for this book, for this day, okay, I'll come along. So thank you for coming out of the retirement that, as you explained in the introduction, you love so very much, and Frankie pulled you out of. Thank you for coming here for that.
Thanks.
And let me just bring my slides back here. Oh, wait, I have to take some slides off. If you could help me. Oh, remove those. Good. Okay, now we got it. Perfect. All right. So for all of you who are tuning in, number one, if you were inspired, why am I even saying if? Because you were inspired, please keep in mind today is a free day of learning. We have put on now 24 gatherings as our gift to the global literacy education community. Because of that, we invite you to please pay the joy forward. Go to gathering.theedcollab.com/charity, and that's where you could learn more about today's charities. You also could donate directly to them. If you have another charity you'd like to give to, or if you giving money is not an option for you right now, but there are other ways that you can pay the joy forward, other ways that you can take the energy, the learning from today and give it to others. That is one of our main goals for these gathering days, is that we learn together, we're community together, but that we also are making an impact. As I said, if you don't have a copy of this book, what's wrong with you? but I know you just haven't had the chance yet. But now today you will get a copy of the Reimagined Wondrous Words. It is so beautiful, and again, I'm so appreciative that it exists. So we have many 30-minute workshops that are coming up right now. There are 2 strands that you can find on the website gathering.theedcollab.com. We have one strand that are teacher tips workshops, so educators talking about practical ideas for the classroom, just like Katie and Stella shared this morning. And then there's another strand of book talks. All of those sessions are educators doing a quick walkthrough of a bunch of different books around a theme that might be of interest to you. The best place to find those is on the event website, and to click the link above any session you'd like to join, or anywhere you can access the YouTube app. If you find the Educator Collaborative, and then go to playlist fall 2025. There you can also click through all of the live sessions. All of the sessions will then be archived and available to watch right after this day is done. So you can come back and be in 2 places at once. Also a reminder that now is almost your last opportunity to register, if you haven't yet, to join the town hall. Just before the closing, you will get an email with the Zoom link to join that town hall session. That is the place that you can come together at the end of the day with some presenters, with EdCollab members, and it's a great place to debrief, talk, and dream forward. Today's gathering is hosted by my professional home, the Educator Collaborative. You can find out more about us, our consulting services, our think tank, and all the different things we do at theedcollab.com. And a lot of you have been doing this already this morning. Thank you. Please do tag us at the EdCollab. So enjoy the rest of your conference day today. Please keep in mind, as we started with this morning, what are you fighting for? Katie and Stella gave us incredible visions of the kinds of work that we can do with kids. I loved Stella said at one point, like we need to continue to center our children, and places like conferences, for example, when you have a reading or writing conference with a child, that's a place to center their voice. We want to create the world that our students deserve. And the way to do that is to listen, as Katie and Stella shared with us, listen to the world around them and listen to them. So please enjoy the rest of your gathering conference. We'll see you in about 5 minutes for the next sessions, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for all that you do for yourselves, for your community, for your students, for your colleagues, and for this amazing profession. Have a great day, everyone, and we hope to see you at the closing.